We're going to go through what's called the finishing process using Resolve, where we're going to show you how to add titles, how to zoom in and out of a shot to polish a shot, how to add music, how to blur something in the background if you need to get rid of a logo, a little bit about coloring, and then how you mix the audio, adding equalization to a voice, compression to the voice, and noise reduction to the voice so that the voice is a little more understandable. So this project is called Praying for My Bully. This is the final cut to Praying for My Bully. And this was the first video that we did to see if it would work. And once we figured out it would work, now we're trying to teach everybody else how to use the same workflow. I cut this down to 3 minutes. The shorter your project is, the better. My first cut was somewhere a little over 4 minutes. And then I got it down to about 3.5 minutes. And we showed it to the mission president up in Layton. And he says, got to get it to 3 minutes. As you go through the fine cutting process, don't have a thin skin. Listen to people's suggestions. You know, I've been in this business since 1970. And yeah, sometimes people make a suggestion. I go, oh, I don't want to do that. But I tell you, I do. I listen to suggestions. And with this, My Bully, been 3 or 4 people that keep telling me to cut it down and cut it down. And I finally got it down to 3 minutes. So that's about where you'll probably want to get your projects to go. Notice that I start with a nice little zoom, a photo of Skyline High School. Now we have the lady who is telling the story. I'm going to put a lower third title over here.
Which of the horizontal tabs are you on down at the bottom?
I'm on edit mode. To do a title, in this box over here in Resolve, there's a title button. You can choose any lower third title you want, but I want to use the basic title. I could do middle, lower third, which would be very easy right now, but I'm not going to do it because I want to show you how you can move that title around. So you just simply take your title and drop it down on the timeline. I'm going to put this magnetic tool so that it just snaps right to the beginning. And I want that title to come right over the top of her. So her name is Lita Robinson. We go, well, where do we put in the basic text? You click on title. Notice if I click on the video, the title in the upper right goes away. But as soon as I click on the title right here, it's now surrounded in red. It shows up over here. So I just take my basic title and change that, and it's Lita Robinson. Now, it's very important that we spell our titles correctly. That's why when we interview them, we have them pronounce their name and spell it. That way you can go back to that and always get the spelling right. There's nothing worse than leaving out somebody's name on a credit or spelling it. Now, the question is, how long do we want that title to be? About 4 seconds or so is a good length of a title. I'm going to have it cut right on, and down at the bottom, notice there's a little button there. I'm going to have it fade out, and we'll see how that fading out looks. Now we have her name, but look at the title. Look how hard it is to read. Oh, that's horrible. To get it to read well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move it down to the Y position. I'm going to leave it, put it right here. I'd like to make a little larger font, so I'm going to, that's a pretty nice readable font. Now, it's still not very readable. Notice that we have these white letters here over this warm lamp, and it's hard to read. It's fairly easy to read over the blue. Just think of this. You want to have your title have contrast around each letter. White on black is the most readable. Well, we can make this a lot more readable by adding a drop shadow to it. So I'm going to scroll over here in the upper right down to drop shadow, and I'm going to add an offset of about 2 on the x-axis and the y-axis. And notice how that suddenly that title pops. I can make that a larger drop shadow if I want, but notice how it's just really popping now. Okay, that's how you make your credit pop out. I can take the blur off and make it a hard, but it doesn't look as good hard. I'm just going to add a little bit of blur to make the black outline soft instead of hard. Pretty readable now, right? So there you go. Now let's look at this title. You do have an option of putting a lower third title on somebody. That's kind of up to you and your production team. But we did not put a title on her because I felt the title took away from the story and her name was not all that important. If I was going to do a title, I would probably leave it on there, I would trim it so it's not on there as long. Read it 4 times. If you can read it 4 times in your mind, then whoever sees the title going by will read it. So I go Lita Robinson, Lita Robinson, Lita Robinson, Lita Robinson. And right there, I can trim that back. So that's about long enough for somebody to read that.
Just began to be really unkind to me. When he saw me in the halls, he would approach me and he'd point at me.
I'll just review that very quickly. To add a title, you go over to your toolbox, click on titles, and grab the title onto the track above the video. It's got to be above the video. If it's not above the video, nobody will see it. Then you select it. It's now surrounded in red. You go over and you type in whatever you want your title to be. You set the font size. You add a drop shadow, and you can position it wherever you want. Now, let's take a look at this little area right here.
Point at me, draw attention to me, so everyone would look and he'd say my name and he would come and get in my face.
Okay, now notice I've got a little jump cut there. Can you see how I've got a cut there? Because I cut out material we didn't need. I have a jump cut, and that's not very pleasing. I shot this in 4K, so I can select this, and now I can zoom in. So I'm going to zoom in on her. I'm going to move this over and move her down about like that. Now watch the impact when we cut in. Did everybody see that? Highlighted. Go over to my inspector here under video, and I can zoom and I can position the shot. So I go bingo.
So everyone would look and he'd say my name and
well, I've got some kind of a weird effect going on there, but this is one way of cutting in. Maybe I have
might be a north cut.
I might have some kind of a cut there. Or oh, okay. What I've got right there is I have a transition, and that transition, I'm going to take the transition out because I didn't want to cut in tight there. Okay. By the way, Command right bracket allows you to zoom in a little tighter. Why is that not? There we go. Okay, so notice now I have a jump cut. You see how that jump cut is? I'll show you how to get rid of that jump cut. But we go over to transitions. We go to video transitions and smooth cut. You may want to write that down. I'm going to grab smooth cut. And what that's going to do is morph through the 2 cuts so you won't be able to see the cut. let's see this. You see how you can't see that cut now? Is that cool? That's called smooth cut. In Avid, we call morph cut. That is one of the most coolest little transitions in the whole film business because you can take out that jump cut.
Does a morph cut like that change the timing at all, or is
No,
it preserves it? So if
no,
you've
it's a,
already
it's a
got
little
mu-
dissolved, so it doesn't change the timing.
so if you've got music already laid in, it's not going to affect it.
No, won't affect
Yeah,
it. So,
yeah.
so this is really cool because I cut some material out that wasn't needed, and I didn't want to cut, zoom in on her yet. Now I'll show you where I want to zoom in. So I used the smooth cut over here. Right here might be a good place to zoom in. So I could highlight this shot and I could zoom in. Now, you want to divide your screen into thirds or fifths. If she's looking this direction, you want her over on this third. That's called the golden section. You want her eyes to be right there, about a third
Yeah.
down.
Uh,
Okay.
it might be good to note that I think in filters there's a rule of thirds overlay that you can put on the video to line it up better.
Oh, there is?
Yeah. Well, I think I thought I saw that while I was going through filters.
Oh, over filters. There's a grid
Oh,
right there. You can
Yeah, it
put
was
on
grid.
it. So, okay. So if I put that grid, notice that it's divided into thirds and 1, 2, and fifths. So notice she's in that fifth. Well, actually in 1, 2, 3, she's 4 over, which is a fairly good place to put her. Okay. So notice we go here. I zoomed into a nice tight shot of here. Realize that shooting in 4K allows us to zoom in that tight without losing any resolution. And I like going in tight right here because she says something's important. Terrifying is so important. So
Started to affect me was
we
when it
cut in
was
from
repeated,
kind of a
when it
wider
became this
shot
habitual bullying.
to a closer
That's when
shot
it
and then a
became
closer
terrifying.
shot. So that's how you zoom in.
Up at him, and really started to affect me was when it was repeated, when it became this habitual bullying.
See how that close up is very powerful right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we showed you how to zoom in. We showed you how to add a title. At this point, you've already cut this down and you've gotten plenty of feedback from the people on your team and so forth. You've got it cut down to 3 minutes or less. You've done your zooming in, you've done your zooming out, you've added your titles, you've fixed any jump cuts you have that you're not going to zoom in with smooth cut. Next step is add some music. So there's a couple of places we could do that. We could do it right here on the timeline, which is where I'm going to do it, or we could do it in Fairlight. We will cut on the timeline and then we'll go to Fairlight. Notice how I've managed my assets. I have an audio folder, a video folder, a photos folder, and a timeline folder, B-roll. I have some training videos here I'm working on. There's some other things. I have something for narration, but we now want to go to audio. In audio bin, I've got my bully music right here. And Jay Packer did this music and it's really nice. I like it. As I look at this, I'm going to go back to the beginning because that's where we want this to start. And I'm going to put an in point for the beginning of the music. I'm going to arbitrarily put an out point because I don't know how long I'm going to leave this music here. So I've got an in point and an out point, and I can just drag it down to my audio 2 track. Now notice, I don't know if you can tell, but Down here, I've got a little bit of time before that music starts. That's not bad. I think I'll just go ahead and leave it. Sometimes I'll cut that blank area out, but I like how this comes in right there. So we'll just let her rip and see how far we would like to take it.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High School. I had a boy that just began to be really unkind to me. When he saw me in the halls, he
Okay,
would
well, I think we
approach
want
me.
more music there, so I'll just drag it over to maybe right here.
He'd point at me, draw attention to me, so everyone would look, and he'd say my name, and he would say a lot of
Now notice the music writer gave us some places for a very easy out. I don't even really need to do a fade out there. By the way, notice I'm grabbing the little grabber in the upper right-hand corner of the clip, and that's a fade out. I don't need to do a fade out there because it just...
point at me, draw attention to me, so everyone would look, and he'd...
So there we go. We've added music at the beginning. Let me say something about music. I got into this business as a music editor in 1970 at the Church Motion Picture Studio at BYU. This producer came to me and he said, "Dennis, we got to fix this film. It's a real dog. You know, you got to save it with music." And what that meant was when it was supposed to be spiritual, bring up the violins, right? Put music on the whole movie and fix it with music. I just looked at that and I go, why don't we learn how to make films that move people from the heart? And that's what you folks are doing right now, is literally making films that I envisioned back in the 70s. And if you do that, you don't need music through the whole thing, right? If you watch television, the Hallmark Channel have these sentimental movies, and they're just plastered with music from beginning to end.
Yeah,
Right?
I told them in my presentation that there needs to be something for the music to enhance, otherwise it can't do anything.
Exactly. So if your music enhances the story, you can leave it in. But if it doesn't, realizing they're making music themselves by their story. So Jay gave us this great piece of music. I like this piece of music because it sets kind of a mood that underscores her story and her feeling at this time. So I got music at the beginning. Now let's look at how we could put some music at the end. So I'm going to scroll all the way to the end, and I want my music to end with a fade out. Double click on my piece of music again. I can go over to find the end of the music and the fade out. You can use your JKL key to go right to the end of your music. Click on the O key to put an out point at the end of the music. That point will line up with the end of the track. Now I'm going to back into this a ways. I don't know how long it's going to be yet, but I'm going to back into this. I don't know how long the music's going to be, so I am going to place an arbitrary endpoint with the I key. So I'll put an endpoint. By the way, notice that the composer has actually given me a couple of natural endpoints here as I just look at the waveform. So I'm going to drag that down, but what I'll do is move it and line it up with the fade out right here. Now I've got to figure out, where do I want to bring this in, the end of the story? So let's just see if my arbitrary throwing the music on is going to work. Now realize the music composer knows how to write to the picture, right? And so this composer has already written to the picture and timed this to the video. And so if I drop that in, it should match up pretty well.
I remember getting off the phone and just being full of gratitude. And
I really like that. Notice he's got the music has got this little...
I remember getting off the phone and just...
There's a whole change in the movie right here when she laughs, right? Then I remember getting off the phone. So let's roll into this and see how the audio is with this music.
Miraculously, after 2 weeks of praying for him, my little home phone rang, and I picked up the phone and was shocked to hear him on the other end. And he said, I know I haven't been treating you kindly, and I just want to apologize. And I was so shocked that I probably just said, that's okay. Thanks. Bye. I remember getting off the phone and just being full of gratitude and realizing.
I kind of like it. I don't know if is Jay here.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
Jay likes that or not, but
No, I that's what I said. The music is good to show these changes, and there's a certain lightness there that you're emphasizing with that, doing it that way.
yeah, I like it. Good work, Jay. So now we've got it down
off
and the
phone
music's
and
in.
just being full of gratitude and realizing, oh my
Okay, so Jay, now the music picks up. It's kind of got a beat going. It helps move the story forward here as she gives a conclusion. The music's a very important element right here because it brings more entertainment value. You know, that whole concept, this is the finish. The story has now come full circle. We're at the end. We're right where we began, the same piece of music. I like ending where we began. So now that we've got the music in, our next step is to go in and do a sound mix to make sure the levels of the music correct, that the voice is clear, that the level of the voice is good, and that there's no noise in the background. So we are now going to go to Fairlight. Let's see what happens at the beginning here with the music.
goodness.
We want to listen to our music level.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High School. I had a boy that just began to be really unkind to me. When he saw me in the halls, he would approach me and he'd point at me, draw attention to me, so everyone would look, and he'd say my name, and he would say a lot of
I'm listening on headset, so I can't make a good decision on this. Is the music underscoring or is it overpowering from what you folks hear on your side?
I think it was just perfect.
Yeah.
I think the end you might need to turn down a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but the beginning here
So I
seems
was a
fine.
sophomore at Skyline High School. I had
You can-
a boy that just began to
I
be
think it's good. It's underscoring it. It adds some emotion to it. So I'm going to leave it. Let me tell you, this doesn't happen very often in this business. Usually you have to set some levels, but you know, this music just was written well for this piece here. I'd like to work with that composer more. So let's go to the end.
I remember getting off the phone and just being full of gratitude.
Okay, so the music is probably pretty good
I
right
remember
here.
getting off the phone and just being full of
If anything, I think I would like to bring the level up. Now, I'm going to show you a little trick here that may not be too good of a thing to do. I am going to make a cut right here.
Oh.
There we go. Okay, so now these two clips are separate. And I can go over and I can just raise the level with this little tool. This is called the gain tool. You see, when I go over that little white line, I now can change the gain on it. It's really cool because it's a wider waveform there. So I want to just boost this up. Notice I'm boosting this up by 7.7 dB, up to 10 dB. Decibels is a loudness meter.
I remember getting off the phone and just
Yeah, maybe just a little bit too loud. I'm going to take that down a little bit to maybe about 5 dB.
I remember getting off the phone and just being full of gratitude.
Okay, that's good. Now we're a little bit loud here, so I'm going to bring this
Gratitude.
down because notice we have a lot going on. Well, with the music, it's quite a lot louder here. So I'm going to bring this down about maybe 7 dB, 8 dB. Let's see how this is.
Full of gratitude and realizing, oh,
Yeah, I could probably bring it down just a little bit more.
of gratitude and realizing, oh my goodness,
How does that sound to you
these
guys?
scriptures are magical.
How does that sound, everybody?
That's pretty good.
My goodness,
Okay.
these scriptures are
I just-
magical.
Now,
It could maybe
go
be
ahead.
it maybe could be a little louder, you know?
okay. Well, let's boot it up. I'm going to go up about, well, let's try 8 dB.
These scriptures
Maybe that's too much.
my goodness,
Okay, I can make this bigger. I can probably have more control over it. There we go.
oh my goodness, these
Is
scriptures
that better?
are magical.
Yeah.
Okay, now right here, we want that last note to come up 100%. So there is a couple of ways of doing that. One, you can go here and do an option click and it gives you a keyframe. Option click, got a keyframe. Option click, I've got another keyframe right here, okay? Now I can bring that keyframe up and watch what happens.
Are magical.
I want it louder.
Are magical.
I can even make that louder.
Are magical.
There we go. What do you think?
It's good.
So
Yeah.
now I've done a little fade up by adding 2 keyframes. And the keyframe on a PC is Alt click. So if you're on a PC and you do an Alt click, it'll add a keyframe. On a Mac, it's an Option click. And there's my keyframe. And what's so nice about those keyframes is as soon as you hit right there, something else happens. You know, when the timeline hits that keyframe, it triggers something. There we go. So I've sweetened up the music there. Next thing I want to do is take care of her voice. So I want to go to home.
Sorry, so earlier when you were editing the volume of the music, you used a cut instead just to bring it down. So why did you choose to use a cut then instead of a keyframe?
I did the cut because I wanted it to immediately change. If I do a cut, it's going to be an immediate change. Plus, it was very easy right there. Cut, one mouse stroke, and I've changed the audio. Where it would have taken 2 keyframes to do that without the cut.
You had to choose a place where the music went down to pretty much nothing, and then that works.
Right. So yeah, I was able to cut because the music, there was no amplitude to the music there, really. Okay.
Okay.
So it's just a little trick that after you learn the rules of keyframing, then it's a little trick that you actually could make a cut if you wanted to. And then that clip itself, you can change the volume level on the entire clip just by dragging the gain bar, right? Okay, does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so here we are at the beginning. Now I am going to mute my music track.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline.
Okay, I would like everybody to listen to this audio and see if you can hear some background noise. Turn up the audio in your rooms.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High School. I had a boy that just began to be really unkind to me when he.
Okay, can you hear that little hum and refrigerator noise?
Yes.
Okay, really bad. It was my fault. I didn't check the camera and I accidentally unplugged the microphone, the little shotgun on my iPhone pointing at her mouth. I was so excited because I spent $100 buying a microphone and a tripod, a little light, and this was going to be the best video ever done with the iPhone 13. And then I get back and I listen to it and I go, what's all this reverberation? That phone was pointed right towards the refrigerator. Listen to that refrigerator. I accidentally unplugged the mic. So what do you do about that? We're going to show you how to fix that.
Fix it in post.
Fixed it in post. We don't want to fix it in post, but we are. This is audio one. This happens to be the voice track. Right up here, can you see where it says effects? I'm going to click on the plus, and this window opens, and we have a restoration. Now, I have two restoration plugins. First is the noise reduction that Resolve has, which isn't too bad. So I'm going to click on that, and let's just play it.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High School. I had
You notice?
Yeah, much better.
Isn't that amazing? There's a free plugin. I'll turn it off.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High School. I had a boy that just began
Did you
to
hear it when I turned it on?
Yes.
That's free. But if you got $35, you can go to Waves and buy this plugin, which is called Clarity. Okay, so here's Clarity.
the scriptures. His words can pop out to us like these words did to me.
But this is a $35 plugin. And this literally took out all of the refrigerator, 100%. Resolve took out about 85% of the refrigerator to where it was just absolutely manageable. This took out 100% of the refrigerator. So if you get a real bad audio problem and you got $35, this is the Waves Clarity. Don't buy the expensive one, just buy the $35 plugin, and it works great. This thing will take music out of the background. This will take helicopters, this will take airplanes and cars out of the background.
Dennis, let me just ask you, this is an important question because I've been listening to all these videos that come from the other mission Facebook pages, and most all of them have elevator music, except for the ones that they've grabbed from the church's sites that have real composed music. But are you saying that we could actually take that music out and put better music in?
Oh, if there's music underneath the interview, that'll take the music out.
And not interfere with the interview?
Won't interfere with the interview. So this will take music out. This is amazing.
She's raised her salute from airports and bus stations all across the land. The wave of her hand as a tear found its way down her cheek, watching the image of her child fade from view.
You can get a free 30-day download of that and try it out.
Try it out.
See what you think. Yeah, this is magic. So there we go. We've done our noise reduction, but there's other things that we need to do to the voice. One is we could equalize, and there is an equalizer right here. You see this? Double click on that and the equalizer opens. The voice is somewhere around 2K. Okay, so this gives you a multi-band equalizer. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the high end down at about 8K. And I tell you why, I want to get rid of some of that reverb.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High School.
Okay, that took a little bit of the reverb out, but it didn't interfere with her voice. Now I'm going to boost this up and try to find a frequency that gives a little more presence to her voice.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High School. I had a boy that just began to be really
okay. So I fooled around with it. I
me.
found that her voice is about 2K. And so now I've boosted 2K up a little bit for people like me that are hard of hearing. You can play around with your equalization. If I want to take the rest of that refrigerator out, I can go down to the low end and I can take that out.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High School. I had a boy.
Notice
that
it does not affect
just
her
began
voice
to
by
be
taking the low frequencies out. So I've taken the low frequencies and the high frequencies out because I had a lot of reverb in the room because I didn't use the shotgun mic, and I had these low frequencies in the room from the refrigerator because I didn't have the shotgun mic. I've EQ'd them out and I've added just a little bit of boost to her voice at 2K. Next thing I want to do is I want to add another plugin, and it's going to be a dynamics plugin. I'm going to use a multi-band compressor. And what this does, this takes all the loud parts of her voice and it lowers them down.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High School. I had
So here's her voice.
a boy that
Did you notice that that just jumped down a little bit? That's an area which was just a little bit too loud. This is a very low compression ratio. I'm going to boost my compression ratio up to about 3-to-1, 3-to-2, somewhere in here.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High
Okay,
School.
now notice by adding more compression to it, it started lowering those peaks. This allows your audience to hear the sound better. It takes the dynamic range out, and especially people like me can hear this much better. I'm also going to add a little bit of gain to it. I'm going to bring up the level here.
So I was a sophomore at Skyline High School. I had
Now,
a
notice
boy
right
that
here, this is bouncing
began
in
to
the
be
red.
really unkind to me. When he saw me in the halls, he would approach me. And
Okay, every once in a while it bounces in the red just a little bit. So I'm going to back that up some. But I'm going to boost this about 1.9 dB. I could have done it by just raising the level over here, but notice I've already raised it all the way up. And so that gives me a little more boost. That's about where you want your levels to be bouncing, just before they turn red. You want a nice sound level. So we listen to
so I
that.
was a sophomore at Skyline High School. I had a boy that just began to be really unkind to me.
Okay, notice now her voice is much more intelligible by adding noise reduction, a little bit of equalization, and some compression. Pretty easy. Any questions on that?
That's really cool. I'd always been taught to keep voice at -6 dB. But are you aiming to put it at just 0?
Well, I want it to be just up there before it distorts. If we were doing this for television, it'd be a whole nother game because you have to have a certain standard for television. So my project I'm working at, we sent that off to somebody that's what they do for their whole career, has been mixing for television. And they will set the levels so they're just absolutely perfect.
Okay.
Okay. As long as it's not up there in the red the whole time, you're okay. You follow me? If there's just a little bit of red every once in a while, just momentarily, it's not too bad. If you don't like that, you can pull it back so you're not getting that red.
So I was a sophomore.
Notice right
at
here is
Skyline
the
High
track.
School. I had a boy that
Just a little bit.
began
I
to
could pull
be
that back
really
a little
unkind to
bit
me.
and I
When
wouldn't,
he
I'd
saw
be
me in
fine.
the halls, he would approach me. And
Okay. You could also add more compression if you wanted to keep that red, or put a limiter on. There's limiters here, which actually will not allow it to go into the red. But I like the compressor. So we've done some compression, we've done some music, we've done some equalization. We're now ready. Let's just go and look at color for a minute. I know we're almost done with time, but go into the color tab. And as I go through this, I find that there's a shot with scriptures here. That's right here. Notice we've got a problem. We have a logo. Sometimes you got to blur out a logo. Well, that's pretty simple. What I'm going to do up here, this is called a node. I'm going to add a node. Add node. add serial node. Now I've got node. I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to grab a circle. I'm going to put that circle right over here. Okay. Now notice that when I get right here, the circle's up there. Well, if I go to the beginning, I should be able to add a keyframe right here. Over here is where I add the keyframes in my correctors. So I'm going to make sure I've got a keyframe added. It might not, I might have to go back and re-add that one, but I'm going to go right here and I'm going to pull this up and notice it added a keyframe. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to pull this down and now notice that moves. I'm going to stop every time it covers the scripture. I'm going to move that keyframe or move it. It's going to notice it adds a keyframe. I get over here and I don't want the scriptures to blur. Now notice we have a frame of hand. Well, right here, I've got to add a keyframe. I'm going to add a keyframe right there. Now, right here, I'll add a keyframe. I'm going to pull this over here. I'm going to pull this back here because see how that follows the hand? I can pull that over a little bit. It follows the hand. And now I want it to be up here. I'm going to grab it right there. And now you get the idea. You can move this around so that it's not going to cover the hand. And then the hand's going to move. And right there, I've got to get right here. If I go back, I want my keyframe to start right there. Now it doesn't follow anything. And bingo, I've got that to follow the logo. You follow me? Now you go, well, how am I going to blur that? Well, it's pretty easy. We're now going to go right here. And there is a blur right here. I click on blur. And all I've got to do is make sure that my node over there is selected. And now I'm going to add blur to it. See how that works, everybody? In fact, I can take that way up there if I wanted to. The red doesn't do much because there's no red in that. But now, as I look at that, see how it's blurred? So sometimes you'll have a logo and you can't, you've got to get rid of that logo somehow by putting a blur over it. Okay? So that's just a cheap way of doing it. There's other ways that you could probably figure out. There's tutorials on it. But now we've added a blur. Let's just look at a color. I look at this. Now I want to, I'm going to look at my curves here. Notice that I've got quite a bit of white in here. Over here to the right, I'm going to turn on my scopes. These are my scopes. This is my white. Notice all this white here. Right here is where my white is. I clicked on curves. I can just pull that little white down and see what happens in the background. It doesn't affect, I don't want her face to get affected too much, but notice how that kind of takes the whiteness out of the back of those walls. So that's something you can do.
Dennis, what are the axes there?
Pardon?
What are the axes? What do they represent? The x-axis and the y-axis?
This axis and this axis? This is the
left and right and up and down.
Right here, these are the blacks. The whites are right here.
Okay, so the y-axis is blackness versus whiteness. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. Oh, I see what you're talking about. So there's we're looking at the black and white. I don't want to mess with the color too much, but it is. But right there, I can just play around with that axis where I can see it.
That's
Okay.
crazy.
Okay, so it's kind of cool, isn't it? There's another thing you can do, and by the way, I am not good at color because I'm colorblind, folks. So I have to use these scopes. I use this vector scope right here, and these are flesh tones right there. This is the flesh tone right there. That's red. So there's some red in the room. Right there's probably some red somewhere. That's going up towards the red. The skin is towards here. This is red, green, blue, yellow right here. So red, the skin tones are more towards the yellow. There's a lot of things you can do here. I don't want to get into it, but let's just look at this shot. I go, okay, I'm going to select this. I'm going to go up to color up here, and I'm going to go auto color. Sometimes auto color actually works. Well, here it didn't do much to us, but it did something. But, I may want to bring the whites down a little bit. Okay. But these are things I would get a tutorial to do your coloring. And sometimes the auto color works.
Yeah.
Once you're done there with your coloring and everything's perfect, you just simply click on the Deliver tab here. And then I always use either YouTube or Vimeo. They're both basically the same. Just choose that, give it a name. Praying for my bully. Then right here, you choose a place to deliver it to on your hard drive. You have the name, where you're going to deliver it to on your hard drive, the YouTube selected. You now add it at the bottom to the render queue. I've already output this several times, so I'm going to rename it if I wanted to. And I hit it, I save. Now it's over in the render queue. I select it, hit render, and now it's going through rendering. I'm rendering at 33 frames a second. If you've got a newer computer than mine, this is a 2009 Macintosh, 13 years old. It's rendering at 25 frames a second or so. Yours may go faster if you have a newer computer. I'm going to stop it. That's it. If you want to find out where it is, just right click and say reveal in Finder, and it'll show you right where that was delivered to. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Right click here and it'll show you where it's delivered to.